and welcome to Advertising Europe's episode 5, which is all going to be about effectiveness. I'm Neal Davies. I am the Chief Executive Officer of BBDO in Dublin. And in a previous life, I was the Global Chief Executive for Effie's, based in New York City. And I spent a lot of time working with the EACA in developing the Effie's program here in Europe. I've attended a lot of galas and I've judged a lot too, playing the roles of both jury member and jury chair since returning to Europe. So I'm delighted to introduce you to our panel of esteemed effectiveness ambassadors, people who have achieved success themselves, not just in the Effies, but in business as both a client or an agency executive. So joining me today are Corina Bratu and Hélène Dusseaux.
Hey.
But before we go into a full introduction to those, I just wanted to remind you all that you are invited to attend the Effie Europe Gala on the 30th of November, which will be online, and there will be more details about that later. So Hélène is a senior brand director in the brand building, innovation, and communication unit at Procter Gamble. She's a Parisian. She now lives in Switzerland, I believe. She began her career at P&G in France, has had many roles in Europe, North America, South America, Middle East, mainly with the beauty and grooming brands. But she's also got a lot of recent experience with the BBIC, the Brand Building Innovation Communication Department, which is a team of experts who consult with agencies and brand leaders on topics relating to brand equity, advertising strategy and execution. Hélène, good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, by the way, great thing. Hélène believes in brands as forces that shape the world and advertising that amplifies the inaudible whispers of the human soul, which I wish we would see more of in modern advertising, but there you go. Corina Bratu is a strategy director at Burnett in Romania, and she's been working in advertising since her first job. I think she's been 14 years doing this and loves every minute of it. And she's won and been honoured at the Cannes Lions, at the Euro Effies, at Effie Romania, at the Golden Drum at Epica and Andes. So you're in very safe hands today with a very, very smart panel. So I'm going to ask the team maybe 3 or 4 questions over the course of the next 20 minutes. And the first one is one that I ask whenever I'm involved with the panel talking about effectiveness, which is, how do you define effectiveness? So Hélène, do you want to try that one first?
Sure. The way I define it is very simple. Advertising that works, so effective advertising, in my mind, is very simply advertising that builds the brand. And it builds the brand short-term and long-term.
I think I'm very influenced by our experience with the Effies, and I'm surely gonna reply that it's always creativity that drives results, both in terms of brand building and business results. And also, as we see more and more over the last years, also, purposeful initiatives that also can drive some positive change in society as well. So that's nice to have. I know that not all brands plan to, save the world or any other type of social mission, but I think that the creativity that when you apply it to your certain objectives, that's where you actually truly measure its effectiveness. Otherwise, it's just form without, it's just execution. It's not a particular, let's say, purposeful meant idea. So as long as you have the results, to me, that calls for effectiveness. Otherwise, it's a nice idea. Bravos, kudos. Let's move on. But it doesn't fully capture the essence of what makes it effective, and it doesn't stand as a best practice in my book.
Good to hear. I want to come back to some of your comments there about social issues shortly. But both of you, I think, have laid out some very, very interesting parameters there. That creativity is very, very important to driving brands. Brands are very important to driving sales results and keeping our shareholders happy, and those sorts of things, both short term and long term. To my mind, though, with effectiveness, it's often that I'm surprised how many times I would read an Effie's case, or have maybe been in a briefing with a client where there isn't any real clear goal. There's never any determination. We have to launch this or we have to advertise that. There's never any sense of what do we want to achieve. And to my mind, effectiveness always starts with somebody asking that question. What are we trying to do here? What does good look like?
And how does success look like? Sorry, I mean, that's what I always ask all my clients and even in your businesses, I always say, what does success look like for you guys? It's not just about, creating this campaign to fill a certain window of communication because your media plan calls for it. What do you actually do? And another question I sometimes ask is, what keeps you up at night in terms of your business? Because that actually can indicate where the business issue is, which can lead to a proper brief that actually calls for a specific objective. So I think it's all in the framing and the question you ask in the beginning. So yeah, you're spot on with having a clear objective.
Interesting, Neal, is I think it's about the change that you want to happen thanks to the communication. And I find it really useful when the teams can articulate the starting point and the end point. That really highlight what is that change, what is that progress that you want to see. I always find it really useful. And that's also where you can assess if the brands are clear or the teams are clear on what are the barriers that they want to overcome by doing this. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Hélène, do you find that changes from, because obviously you've worked with and been responsible for a lot of different brands and a lot of different brands in lots of different markets. Do you find that conversation changes each time, or there are familiar themes that keep coming up?
They're very familiar themes. The barriers are pretty much always the same. They are the usual suspects. And it depends when you're in the funnel, but it can be, from the basic, I'm launching a new brand. So frankly, my first one is on to drive awareness of the brand, can be a notion of consideration and affinity with the brand, can be just like my brand stands for something that is so out of touch with today's society. So, when you've worked on brands that have been in the market for quite some time, it happens that the brands sometimes have lost touch. And so you find your brand totally disconnected with the user base. And you've got kind of this aim, which is, well, basically, I'm hated. My brand is hated. It stands for something that consumers don't relate to at all any longer. And I want to drive that connection back again. Again, that's one of the challenges, for instance. So frankly, the usual suspects are very confirmed every single time. Yes.
That's, in some ways, that's good to hear, I think, that there are certain rules and practices within marketing that we can learn from and apply again and again and again, as long as we challenge ourselves to make sure that we're not just doing it because it's part of a factory mechanism. We're actually thinking about how we approach it.
Problems are always the same. What I like is, I think, Corina, you were saying it's the solutions need to be creative. That's frankly that's really what I like.
I think too many times I see, especially from, maybe younger colleagues, trying to reinvent the wheel, I say, and then there is, or younger marketeers, for instance, but if you know your fundamentals, you can actually see so many patterns, and then you allow the right energy to finding the right solution. But you need to indeed have a hard look at the data and have that moment of self-awareness and I like what you said, Hélène, very much, having that moment where you realize my brand is disconnected. At some point along the way, I lost touch. I became a little bit too safe or too dusty or too stuck in some routines. And, meanwhile, so many things have happened. Every brief we receive is focused on Gen Z, for instance. So this entire new generation coming into the market, having their own money, having so many completely different expectations from brands and communication overall. So you need to have this moment of self-acknowledgement and assessment to realize, yes, I might have a solid brand, but I'm losing touch. Yeah, that's a very strong point you touched on.
And again, Corina, do you find that would differ from, say, T-Mobile to Dusseaux to UNICEF to Peter, to any of the different brands that and I know that you represent some P&G brands, so I don't want to maybe bring that up now, but do you see difference in that sense?
I feel that, so while the fundamentals and the theory and the purchase funnel and everything we discussed might be the same, you do have some particularities. We have brands who are trying to, reach such a broad audience. And when you try to talk to everybody, you end up being very vanilla and you lose touch and it's very just bland. And then you have these moments after you're glad that you delivered the campaign, but maybe you feel like you could have touched on a more insightful if you narrowed it down a bit. So I think it all depends on how you look at your target and how you actually grasp what's for them burning right now, what's their zeitgeist, so you better tailor it. And then you can do the X-ray on your brand and see, am I part of their life? Am I still in tune with what they're feeling and their attitude, or am I a bit disconnected? So we try to take it one by one. In our agency, we use data. We use a lot of social listening to fully grasp the let's say the little things that people don't say in focus groups and what they don't declare, and try to find that those little micro insights that can actually reveal a deeper tension. So I think it goes case by case. It's a lot of work, but somebody, it's something that has to be done. And we are privileged to work alongside people from our marketing teams who have also this very, let's say, affinity towards data as well. So they also make sure that they are always keeping track of everything. So it's not just us in the agency doing our, geeky work. It's also them. So when you combine this, you end up actually having a better picture. It's not just analysis paralysis. It's not too much data. It's actually having the proper ones, putting them together and seeing where you stand. So yeah, it's one by one to answer to your point. And it's what proves to be effective until now to work. If there's a simpler model, I would love to listen to it to learn. But yeah, so far, this is what works for us.
Good to know. I wish there was a simpler model for everything, but maybe that's not true. One of the things, I think, probably just building on that a little bit, Corina, as well, I wanted to talk about the role of digital and digital channels in brand building. And there's a quote that I love, which is that digital media gives us so many hyper-targeting opportunities, but you can't target somebody into giving a crap about your brand. There was obviously a slightly rude word in there, but a more academic approach might be Les Binnett and Peter Field have published many studies about the different timescales involved between digital sales activation and long-term brand building, how you get a short-term sales uplift with a lot of digital activity, but long-term sales growth comes from brand building, which happens over a longer period of time, but the metrics get compressed. Because we can measure something quickly, we view things in very short units of time rather than what's the medium-term or long-term effect. Hélène, within the suite of brands that you look at, do you address or think about the difference between longer-term brand building, obviously, which is something that P&G's entire reputation has been built on, and the short-term promotional opportunities that digital affords us? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, we do. And I think, frankly, all brands do. It's the usual story about watering the roots and picking up the fruits. Frankly, you need both. Okay. Now, what I find interesting is when people kind of look at digital as only short-term activations and kind of, picking up the roots. And it's unquestionable that there is a part of digital marketing that is about promotion, immediate sales, e-commerce that allows us to track and performance marketing. So it's unquestionable that there is a whole part of digital that allows this. What is really interesting is, my computer, is I don't know why we assume that digital platforms can't do the rest. And if I look in my practice, it actually is very interesting. We actually see that digital can do absolutely everything. You can do the upper funnel, the watering the roots, the real brand building, and you can do the short-term activations and promotions. You can absolutely do all of that. The ecosystem is really big. Now, what we found and that I found absolutely fascinating is it really depends on the platforms. And some platforms you can do it, but you need to break the message. So I need one asset that really does the upper funnel and one asset that does the the click, okay? But I need different assets for that. But on some other platforms, actually, they are more tolerant. And I've got examples where actually an asset can do the whole thing. Interestingly, that seems to be linked with influencers and creators. And I found that a really interesting evolution, that frankly, in just one asset, we can potentially combine the upper and the lower funnel. I found that really fascinating as an evolution.
Very good. Corina?
I think you touched on a great point with the channels itself, the mix and how you use them. I think I just remember this brilliant, I think you might remember the Google ad from a few years ago, the Google Sophie ad, and that ended with this brilliant message: the internet is how you use it. So I think this answers exactly to your point. And I mean, you can use it for, performance and click, buy now, and all that nitty gritty stuff that is very necessary. but it can be like, very promo driven, very cocaine for marketing people because it drives the short-term instant gratification situation. But at the same time, you can use it as a platform for storytelling and brand building and creating this deeper connection that people want, especially when you look at younger people. And I'm now going back to Gen Z because I've been obsessed about them for the past months, where they try to feel validated. That's why they crave authenticity. That's why influencers are a great channel for them, because when you let your brand a little bit, let's say you don't take yourself so seriously and you allow this co-creation to happen, that's when they also let you in as a brand. But if you only use it to rerun the same TVC ad on digital, it's not going to work. I mean, you don't understand the full scope of the medium and you're using it to your disadvantage. So I think it is a tango. It is a question of balance and what you seek. And I would always say that, yes, of course, it can drive digital sales and everything that database, first party data, whatever is important to your brand. But at the same time, you can use it for long-term brand building if you fully understand and if you allow the storytelling and giving people either the entertainment, the utility, the inspiration they seek. Hope that answers your question. It was very long, sorry.
No, it was a good answer, and it kind of moves into the next question a little bit as well, which is obviously that was quite theoretical, but are there any trends in marketing or communication about which you're currently excited? Hélène, you were kind of talking about finding a proper use for influencers and the creativity that comes with that. Anything else or any more you would like to say about that?
Well, that's really frankly the trend that we are observing, and that's probably the main challenge. It's being driven by TikTok as a platform from what we can observe. And the use of the creators, I find that really interesting because it's kind of shifting away from the traditional model also of using celebrity. Those people aren't celebrity. Those people are influencers or creators. They are really everyday people, if you want. And somehow what we can do when we leverage them properly is indeed telling this brand story, this narrative, Corina, that you were mentioning, kind of relating to people in a very authentic way. And at the same time, because maybe they demonstrate the product in front of your eyes, they show you how the product works, or they show you like the superiority of the cleaning that you can achieve with this, it is actually extremely convincing and people click on it. So I find that that's really what we observe as the main, as the main recent trend.
I find that very, very spot on, especially when what we're seeing in our countries in Eastern Europe as well, and in Romania particularly. I've also seen another trend that somehow expands from this. I've seen brands trying to capitalize on rising influencers. You named TikTokers and so on. So they're trying to get them and have them as endorsers and also validate and even give them a bigger spotlight, putting them on TV. And that's also, so they're riding the wave. They're capitalizing on somebody who has 2 million followers on TikTok, and they're putting that person on TV. But on TV, it's so mainstream. Not everybody will recognize them, but those who do will make this connection. And for them, it's like, I know that guy. She's the girl from TikTok. That's really fun. And especially for brands who want to capture this pop culture, this zeitgeist of the moment. Another trend I've spotted, again, it also very influenced by social media. I think it's more of an executional one, but in terms of look and feel of ads lately, I don't know. I mean, for me, back in the day, brands used to be the ones that, set the tone. Everything was supposed to be very, very, proper 4K, H definition, drones and everything very high, let's say high value production, added value. But now, as TikTok is becoming overall this very BeReal aesthetic that's unfiltered, a little bit glitchy, the camera is a bit shaky. And I'm now seeing brands trying to also borrow from this more authentic look and feel. And at the same time, I've seen this sort of reversal. I'm seeing content creators in Romania getting more and more professional. They're having 4K cameras and drone shootings. And I feel it's an interesting shift, from brands trying to be more glitchy or authentic. At the same time, content creators becoming, some of them even, especially on YouTube, more and more specialized. And it's interesting to see where this, let's say, will lead. Of course, it depends on the brands and how much you're willing to, do it less perfect. But it's interesting to see how, the look and feel and the aesthetics of social media is catching on and, spilling over brands, whereas it used to be vice versa. Brands would set the tone. I don't know if that's something you've also picked up on. It's a very recent observation. I'm sharing it first now. I haven't fully had time to digest it properly, but it just caught my eye recently. Yeah.
Very true. Very true. So with an eye on the clock, let's just go to the final question, the final part of the discussion. I know that you've both been involved in the Effie Europe judging sessions in the last couple of months. Are there any observations from those juries that you sat in on? You know, one of my favorite questions is, did you see any work that you'd wished that you'd made yourself, anything that really inspired you to that level? Hélène?
Yeah, and frankly, that would be my first reaction, which is there was some really good creativity. And it's not always the case, frankly, but there was really some good creativity this year. Well, I had like two observations that frankly stayed with me. One is I got really inspired by brands who stayed with their roots, stayed with their equity, stayed with their assets, although that looked like completely contradicting what the market wanted. So let's say my positioning is outdoor, it's COVID, it's lockdown, and nonetheless, I am a brand linked to outdoor, and I embrace that, and I find a way to work with it. So being true to my brand and staying true to my brand equity, even though it would be very tempting to say, well, looking at the environment or the competition, I'm just going to go this way because that's kind of, you know, where the rest of the world goes. But so I was really impressed. And that to me is a really good example of creativity. Is really, that is the constraint. My brand equity is my constraint. I need to find a creative way to articulate my brand equity in a way that's still relevant. So I was impressed by this, frankly. The other one is, and that's a frankly a recurring observation, is the best cases are extremely insightful. The best cases have a really deep insight that solves a real human problem. Voilà. And I got that again and again and again. And every time I see one of those, I'm like, oh, this is so good. So yeah, I got those two observations.
Very good.
I wish I would have been in the same jury, in the jury session with you. No, but I think you touched on some great points, and it's very similar to my experience. The recent experience with judging for Effie this year was amazing. Of course, it was this, you know, this, let's say, this very rich plateau of ideas and creativity, and seeing so many countries somehow at the same time think alike, but at the same time touching on, you know, personal and local, let's say, local context and insights. I've seen judges being extremely excited by brands who had the positive change aspect also attached to their business goals. So I've seen it. It was a trend over the last years, you know, purposeful brand and so on. But I think, especially since the pandemic, we've seen it even more and more. And when, you know, you have a brand that wants to sell their product or service, and they're doing a nice campaign, and it's nice for the target, insightful, great execution. And then you have a similar brand who's also trying to sell their products and service, but adds this little sprinkle of, you know, trying to change a social behavior or trying to, you know, offer a different perspective that can lead to a positive change. And whenever that happened, you've always seen people in the jury going like, of course, we're going to go for the second one, because they also tried a little bit more, you know, like giving it a little extra nudge. So I think we'll be seeing more and more of these very purposeful campaigns that, you know, apart from achieving their business goals, they're trying to, you know, put a little brick, you know, shoulder onto a higher change. This was the case, especially. Maybe I have also been judging the positive change section, which some maybe polarizes my opinion, because that was a very anticipated section, and all the jurors from all the countries were very excited. I have 3 campaigns that I was very jealous on, and I'm not gonna lie. I mean, the campaign, and some of them I've known them from before. So seeing the kitchen work behind it, seeing everything, the logic was even more exciting. The campaign done by 3, the telco brand for the connected island, which was a B2B case, but it was B2C2B. It was like an amazing brand. It was an amazing brand statement of, you know, network superiority and the implications it can have on the long term of the community. From the social category, there were a lot of NGOs doing great work with so little money and so few resources, which is always a nice way of it's impressive. I love the shop that nearly wasn't from a Nordic country. I don't remember which now, but I think it was a brilliant exemplification of how you can reframe and make a fresh statement on the same story of, funding cancer. It's not a recent topic, so it's kudos to them for giving a fresh perspective on the cause. There was another campaign I loved from Turkey for Finnish for the water index, where I think it was, I don't know, you look it up, it was really amazing on how they tried to raise awareness on saving water and how this creating the water index in the stock market. It was a very neutral, lateral idea that was, it's one of those ideas you don't know how to, is it PR, is it direct, is it digital, what is it? It's all in one. It's like Superman. It's all in one, and trying to I love this sort of, lateral media neutrality. So I think there were so many other more, but what stayed with me was also this, this higher, let's say, implication that when brands when they took this, let's say, higher road, I think everybody from the jury instantly appreciated, and they were like, yeah, they deserve to be. This is a best practice. What one question kept popping up in our jury session, the one we had on Zoom, was like, is this a best practice for Effie? For Europe? People, when all the time we were trying to assess, this was the question, but is this a best practice for Europe that we would like to set a standard? And judging by this, to me now it feels like the best practices also have this element of trying to go a little bit beyond business and brand results, and also impacting society or community in particular. I don't know, Neal, if this was your experience as well.
Yeah, pretty much. And the positive change, Effie's, is something that are very, very close to my heart. Anyway, I think for some of the reasons that you listed there. But to my mind, it links back almost to what Hélène was saying, that, it's always great to see something that's insightful. And in a lot of cases, I think because there are so many marketing playbooks that people use, I'm going to do this to drive awareness, that the insight is usually based around the interaction between the consumer and the product and the usage, whereas actually there's a lot of insight around how something purposeful on top can actually change your opinion about a product or a brand or a service, and actually drive engagement and awareness that way as well. So there's actually a lot of overlap between the two things that you each raised there. I think unfortunately our time is up. But that was, I'm hoping, a very useful and effective conversation about effectiveness. So I just wanted to thank you both, Corina and Hélène, for joining us today on Advertising Europe. But before we go, to anybody watching, if don't click off yet, I wanted to remind you all that you're invited to attend the Effie Europe Gala on the 30th of November, and look forward to seeing you all then. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Neal. Thanks, Corina. Bye.
Have a great day.